I'm Julia Bennett. I'm 42 years old, and this was supposed to be a good night. A night to celebrate my daughter, Emma, heading off to college. We had the backyard strung up with lights, those little ones that look like fireflies, tables full of food, her favorite playlist on loop, and almost 40 people, family, friends, neighbors, everyone we loved gathered around. Charles, my husband of 18 years, stood up with a glass of champagne in hand, tapping it lightly with a fork. Everyone turned to him, expecting a toast to Emma. She smiled, already blushing before he even said anything. But instead of talking about our daughter, he looked straight at me and said, "I think it's time I start a new chapter. Without you." I swear, the entire yard went silent. The music kept playing, but no one moved. Emma's smile froze. My sister gasped so loudly you could hear it across the lawn. Charles was still holding his glass like he expected applause. I looked at him, not blinking, not speaking, just watching the man I had once trusted with my whole life deliver a speech like he was giving a weather report. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even flinch. I reached into my purse, pulled out an ivory envelope, and walked up to him. I placed it gently on the table beside his wine glass. "You'll want to read this later," I said, my voice calm. I turned to Emma, kissed her on the cheek, and whispered, "This night is still about you. I'm so proud of you, baby." Then I stepped away from the table, smoothed the hem of my dress, and faced the crowd. "Please enjoy the food. Have a beautiful evening. Thank you all for being here." I walked away as if I were leaving a book club, not a marriage. The only sound behind me was the clink of someone setting down their fork. As I reached the gate, the late summer air of Oregon hit me. Warm, heavy with pine and dusk, but for the first time in a long time, I could breathe deeply. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Then the voice I'd shared a bed with for nearly 2 decades, shaky now, high-pitched, not confident anymore. "Julia, what the hell is this?" I didn't stop walking. I didn't look back, just allowed myself the smallest smile. Because that envelope, that wasn't a reaction. That was a beginning. I had written it 2 months ago. I had planned every word, every moment. He thought he was making the big move, the dramatic exit, the fresh start, but he had no idea I had already left him in every way that mattered. The woman he humiliated in front of friends and family, she didn't exist anymore. The Julia standing in that driveway, heels clicking softly on brick, purse in one hand, calm in the other, was someone else entirely. And she wasn't done. Not even close. You know what's funny? Everyone at that party probably thought I was shocked, like I didn't see it coming. Like I was the clueless wife caught off guard by her husband's grand betrayal. But the truth is, I wasn't shocked. I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of smiling when I wanted to scream. Tired of shrinking myself to keep someone else feeling tall. I met Charles when I was 24, fresh out of grad school, full of fire, ideas, ambition. I wanted to work in creative branding, build campaigns that made people feel something. And for a while, I did. I got hired at this scrappy little agency in Portland, pulled late nights on product launches, pitched to CEOs, traveled for client meetings. I felt alive. And then came marriage, and then came Emma. And suddenly, I wasn't Julia anymore. I was Charles's wife, or Emma's mom, or the one who'll stay home just until things settled down. Except things never really settled. There was always something. A new job for Charles, a move to a better neighborhood, preschool schedules, medical bills, family birthdays. I kept saying yes. Yes to stepping back. Yes to staying quiet. Yes to shouldering more so he could carry less. And you don't notice how fast it happens. The disappearing. At first it's small, skipping the networking event, shelving the business idea. Then one day you wake up and realize you've become the background character in your own life. I used to tell myself it was sacrifice. That's what love is, right? You give, and eventually it comes back around. Except with Charles, it didn't. What came back was distance. Cold silences, criticism dressed up as jokes. You wouldn't understand the pressure. This isn't your world, Jules. Somewhere along the line, I stopped being a partner and became a support beam. Invisible, but expected to hold everything up. And I did. I kept the household running, I managed the bills, I edited Emma's college essays, I even remembered to send flowers to Charles's mother every birthday. I was efficient, reliable, unshakable, but not seen. Not really. The strange part? I didn't even realize how lonely I'd become until I wasn't. A few months before the party, I started going to this local cafe again. Just me, a book, no roles to play. The barista called me by name, asked what I was reading. I forgot what that felt like, to be looked at, not as someone's mom or someone's wife, but as someone. That's when I knew. I had been playing a part for so long, I forgot it was a role. And I was done. Done performing, done waiting, done hoping someone would come rescue me from the life I'd built by trying to be good. Because the truth is, I don't need rescuing. I just need to remember who I was before I disappeared. And that's exactly what I plan to do, one move at a time. It started with a receipt. That's all. Just one crumpled receipt for a dinner at Meadow Lane Bistro, this overpriced farm-to-table place in downtown Portland where Charles always said the portions were too small and the waiters were too pretentious. Except this receipt wasn't for two. It was for 3 glasses of wine, a bottle of imported sparkling water, dessert, and a jewelry box. I remember holding that little slip of paper in my hand, staring at it like it would explain itself. And then came the Uber history. One ride at 11:38 p.m. from Miranda's apartment complex. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for Emma's car keys. But once you see one crack, you can't unsee it. I noticed he started coming home later, always with some excuse. Client dinner, traffic, a board meeting that ran long. The man hated meetings. He once left a PTA event halfway through because people talk in circles. But now he suddenly loved meetings? And then there were the phone calls, whispered ones, in the hallway, in the garage, on our back porch at midnight, like the stars needed to hear his secrets too. One night, he left his phone on the kitchen counter. I wasn't even planning to check it, but it buzzed twice. The name that popped up wasn't saved as Miranda, or even a name. It was just the letter M, but the preview of the message said everything. Only 2 more weeks, and then we went up at the cabin together, just you and me. No more lies. I remember my fingers going numb, not from the betrayal, from the sheer stupidity. The cabin, the one my mom left me, the one I used to take Emma to every summer to paint rocks and read mystery novels. I hadn't even been there in months. The place was supposed to be our legacy, mine and Emma's, not his little escape plan. I logged into the property portal that night just to check, and there it was. The title of the cabin had been updated. 2 names now, Julia Bennett and Miranda Hale. I couldn't believe it. No, scratch that. I could believe it, because this wasn't just a fling. This was strategy. He had been moving money out of our joint account bit by bit, $27,000 over the course of 5 months. Not huge chunks, just enough to avoid raising alarms. But I noticed, because guess who's always managed our household finances? Guess who balanced the checkbook and filed the taxes and set up the college savings plan for Emma while Charles was too busy talking about legacy wealth over cigars with his golf buddies? Me. I kept digging. Airline points transferred to Miranda, 2 bracelets ordered to the same P.O. box, a lease application for an apartment downtown co-signed by both of them. And the worst part? He was still smiling at me every morning, still asking if I needed anything from the store, still kissing Emma on the forehead like he wasn't about to blow her world apart. That's when something inside me snapped. Not in a violent way, not in a dramatic throw the plates kind of way. It was quieter than that, colder, like a steel door locking into place. I realized he wasn't just betraying me. He was trying to erase me, replace me, rewrite the narrative of who built this life and who deserved to keep it. But Charles forgot one thing. I don't forget details, and I don't lose quietly. He might have had a plan, but so did I. And mine didn't involve running. It involved rebuilding, with receipts, with evidence, with strategy, just like he taught me, back when he still respected me. The thing about being underestimated for too long is that people forget you're watching, listening, remembering. They get sloppy. They think quiet means weak. But I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because I was loading. Charles had always been the loud one, the front-facing one. I was the behind-the-scenes engine that kept everything running. While he was shaking hands and telling stories at cocktail parties, I was handling mortgage renewals, tax prep, Emma's FAFSA, and checking that the smoke alarm still worked. So when I found out what he'd been doing, transferring funds, forging co-ownership, rewriting our marriage like it was just a preface to his real life, I didn't scream. I logged in to everything. Our joint accounts, the 401k, his brokerage. I exported the statements, cross-referenced dates, highlighted patterns. I even built a spreadsheet, color-coded, of course, tracking every expense with her name on it. The travel, the gifts, the dinner at that bistro he used to mock. And the moment I had enough, I called Philip Anderson. He used to be my mom's attorney, actually. Kind eyes, dry wit. The kind of man who reads prenuptial agreements like bedtime stories. I sent him everything. "Julia," he said, after our first call, "you do realize this prenup is enforceable, right?" I blinked. "Even after all these years?" He chuckled. "Especially after all these years. He added a fidelity clause, remember? You were the one with the assets when you got married. He wanted protection. Turns out, he gave you the golden key." I sat there, stunned. Charles had insisted on that prenup back when I had an inheritance and he had ambition. He framed it like a business move. Just paperwork, he said, just in case. Well, now it was my turn to make moves. I didn't confront Charles right away. I didn't warn him. I didn't hint. I waited. Because if he was going to throw his announcement in front of friends and family, I wanted him to feel the illusion of control, right up to the moment it shattered. I began preparing. I filed paperwork under a temporary seal, emergency divorce motion, with cause. I froze the accounts he didn't know I could access. I updated the deed of the cabin, initiating a fraud investigation through the county office. I had receipts, bank logs, voice memos, screenshots. I even had a photo of him holding Miranda's hand outside a real estate office, the kind of thing you think won't matter until it does. And the best part, he had no idea, none. He still kissed my cheek in the morning, still called me Jules, still asked what I wanted for my birthday. I smiled and said candles. He gave me perfume. I gave him silence, strategic silence. Because I wasn't rushing revenge, I was designing it. He thought I was fragile. I was just focused. He thought I'd crumble. I was crystallizing. I knew the date he was planning to make his grand exit. I saw it in the message on his phone. "Let's do it after Emma's party. Clean break." Oh, it would be clean, all right, just not in the way he imagined. And when the night came, when he stood there with his glass of champagne and that smug little smirk, he thought he was 5 steps ahead. He wasn't. I was already gone.
And the woman he tried to leave behind, she didn't exist anymore. But the woman I was becoming, she was just getting started.
The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I couldn't sleep. Surprisingly, I'd slept like a rock, but because I wanted to see the house in that still, quiet light one more time. I walked barefoot through the kitchen, past the hallway photos, into the sunroom where Emma used to do her homework. It didn't feel like grief. It felt like clarity. My phone buzzed. 10 missed calls, 4 texts, all from Charles. One from his sister, too. The subject line on one text just said, "We need to talk." No kidding. I didn't respond. Not yet. I made coffee, fed the cat, sat down, and opened my laptop. Everything was already in place. Documents filed, accounts restricted, notifications to his firm and our financial advisors sent. But I refreshed everything anyway. I wanted to feel the weight of what I'd done, not out of guilt, out of pride. At 8:42 a.m., I heard his car screech into the driveway. He didn't knock, just barreled through the front door like a man expecting a scene. He looked wild, shirt half-buttoned, hair a mess, still smelling like whatever whiskey he thought would make last night disappear. I stayed seated on the couch, calm, centered, laptop open, tea in hand. "Julia, we need to talk about this like adults." I nodded slightly. "Then sit." He didn't. He paced. He waved the envelope I'd given him, already opened, already creased, like he'd clutched it in panic all night. "You served me with divorce papers the same day I told you I was leaving? That's sick." I tilted my head. "You mean the day you announced it, publicly, during our daughter's party?" "Right, that day." He clenched his jaw. "You blindsided me." I almost laughed. "Oh, Charles, that's rich." He launched into his speech then, about how we used to be great, how maybe things went sideways, how we could have handled this with dignity. He even said the word grace. I let him go on, let him dig. Then I opened a folder on my laptop and turned the screen toward him. Bank statements, wire transfers, screenshot of him signing the cabin co-ownership papers with Miranda. He went pale. "Where did you get all that?" he whispered. I raised an eyebrow. "You forgot who used to run your QuickBooks." He didn't speak, just stared at the screen like it might burst into flames. "Also," I added, "Miranda may want to check the lease application you filed last month. I got a call from the agent after she flagged your credit inconsistencies. That apartment, never finalized." His mouth opened, but no words came out. I leaned back. "You planned a clean break. I planned a clean record." He tried again. "The prenup's expired. Any lawyer would say." "It's not. Section 14, fidelity clause, no expiration." Philip confirmed it twice. The panic was visible now, hands twitching, voice thin. "You went to a lawyer before I even said anything?" "No. I went to a lawyer after you started acting like I was nothing." That shut him up. For a second. But then came the final card, the one they always play. "What about Emma? You think this doesn't affect her?" I stood, calmly, slowly, looked him in the eye. "You didn't think about Emma when you promised a stranger our family cabin. You didn't think about her when you drained her college fund for champagne and hotel suites. Don't you dare weaponize our daughter." His face fell. Like he suddenly remembered Emma wasn't just a symbol. She was a person. A teenager. His daughter. And she'd seen it all. I walked to the door and opened it. "You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow to collect your things. After that, the locks change." He didn't move, just stood there. "Julia, this isn't over." "No, it's not. But you won't like how it ends." And I shut the door. Emma showed up that afternoon without texting first. She never does that. She's always been the considerate one, the kid who asks if now's a good time before sharing something big. But not that day. She pulled into the driveway fast, slammed the door, and walked into the house with a look I hadn't seen since she was 10 and broke her arm on the monkey bars. Not pain, not even anger, just confusion layered over betrayal. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, standing there in her denim jacket and graduation cap still on the seat of her car. "Why didn't you say anything before last night?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. How do you explain that silence was protection? That I thought shielding her from the storm would spare her? That I still saw her as my little girl, even when she'd already outgrown the safety nets I'd built? I motioned for her to sit, made tea, not because I thought tea would fix anything, but because when you're a mother and everything's broken, you still reach for rituals. I told her everything, from the receipt to the lease agreement, from the prenup to the sealed court filing, from my long walks to the lawyer's office to the night I sat in this very room and realized I'd become invisible. Emma didn't interrupt. She didn't cry. She listened the way her father never could, with stillness, with weight. When I finally finished, she leaned back on the couch and looked up at the ceiling like she needed space to process what used to be our life. He hugged me that morning. He told me how proud he was. Her voice cracked. And the whole time, he knew he was going to blow everything up? I nodded slowly. He wasn't just betraying me, Emma. He was betraying both of us. She looked at me, eyes sharp now, steadier. No, he was betraying himself, because whatever version of himself he thought he could build from this, it's already crumbling. I wanted to protect her, still, but she wasn't asking for protection. She was asking for the truth, and she deserved it. I kept quiet, I told her, because I didn't want your last semester to be about my collapse. I wanted you to walk across that stage with pride, not pain. Emma wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket. He still ruined it. I nodded. He did. But we won't let him ruin what comes next. She turned to me then, really turned, and said the one thing I hadn't let myself hope to hear. "I'm proud of you, Mom." That sentence broke me in the softest way, not from sadness, from relief. Because for so long, I had felt like the woman behind the curtain, the fixer, the silent force, the background character. But now I was standing in front of my daughter as a whole person, not just her mother, a woman who chose herself. She asked where things stood legally. I told her about the court date, the evidence, the likelihood that Charles would lose more than he ever expected. Emma didn't cheer. She didn't want revenge. She wanted accountability. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't need filling. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a framed photo. It was from her 5th birthday. Me, her, and Charles in the backyard covered in chocolate cake. I don't want to forget the good parts, even if they came from people who turned out bad. I nodded. You don't have to forget them. You just don't have to live there anymore. That night, she stayed over. We made popcorn, watched reruns of some sitcom we used to love, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I laughed. Not because the show was funny, but because I was still standing, still whole. And for the first time, Emma could see it too. Court isn't like the movies. No dramatic gasps, no sudden yelling. Just cold chairs, stale coffee, and the smell of old carpet and nerves. The morning of our preliminary hearing, I wore navy. Classic, grounded, calm. Philip met me on the courthouse steps, holding a leather folder like it contained an entire lifetime. "You ready?" he asked. "I've been ready," I said, and I meant it. Charles showed up 5 minutes late with a young lawyer who looked like he should still be in law school. No briefcase, no confidence, just a tablet and a wrinkled shirt. It was almost insulting. After everything he'd done, this was how seriously he took it? He wouldn't even fight with dignity. When the judge walked in, an older woman with sharp eyes and zero patience, the room stilled. She reviewed the prenup first, flipping through it with the speed that only comes from reading thousands of these in her lifetime. "This agreement is valid," she said without even looking up. Section 14 clearly outlines the fidelity clause, which remains in effect for the duration of the marriage. Charles shifted in his seat. His lawyer cleared his throat and said, "Your Honor, we believe the agreement has lapsed due to the length of the marriage." The judge didn't blink. There is no expiration clause, and Section 18 explicitly covers this period. Then she turned to me. "Mrs. Bennett, do you have documentation of the financial discrepancies?" I nodded. Philip slid the evidence forward: bank transfers, joint withdrawals, property records, a digital folder labeled cabin fraud. The judge spent maybe 2 minutes flipping through it before saying, "I'm ruling to freeze all joint assets pending full discovery. Mr. Bennett will retain access to his personal account only." I glanced at Charles. His face was blank, like the numbers on the page didn't mean anything. But I knew they did, because his real punishment wasn't just financial. It was psychological. He was losing control. The judge continued, "The family cabin will remain in Mrs. Bennett's possession during proceedings. The property transfer filed without spousal consent is being flagged for further review." Translation: Miranda wasn't getting her mountain view. The hearing wrapped quickly after that. No fireworks, just paperwork and a subtle unraveling of a man who thought he could rewrite the rules. As we stepped out of the courtroom, Charles followed behind me like a ghost trying to catch up to the living. "Julia," he called, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Can we talk?" I turned. Let him see my face. Not angry, not even cold. Just done. What could you possibly say that isn't already in the record? He took a step closer. 20 years together, that has to mean something. It did, until you decided it didn't. He looked older suddenly. Smaller, like the weight of his choices was finally pressing against his chest. "I made a mistake." I nodded. "You made 100, and I finally stopped cleaning them up." Philip gave me a look. It was time to go. I turned back to Charles one last time. "You built a fantasy, Charles. I built a case. And the difference is, mine holds up in court." I walked out without looking back. No dramatic music, no final tear. Just the sun hitting my face outside that courthouse, reminding me that even after everything, the light still belonged to me. It's funny how quickly a house can shift from being ours to just mine. After the hearing, after the door finally closed behind Charles for good, the silence felt different. Not heavy, not lonely, just honest. I took down the framed photos in the hallway, not because I wanted to erase the past, but because I was making room for the future. I repainted the living room myself, sunlight yellow. I replaced the dining chairs. I moved his old recliner to the curb. It felt like shedding old skin. Then I did something I'd been dreaming about for years. I opened my own financial consultancy. Just me, one laptop, and a secondhand desk in a little office above a bookstore downtown. I called it Bennett Financial Transitions because that's what I was living through, and that's who I wanted to help. Women going through hard pivots, women rebuilding, women who, like me, were tired of being kept in the dark about money. My first client was a woman named Carla. Divorced, confused, smart as hell. She cried through our first session, not because of the numbers, but because it was the first time someone explained things to her without talking down. By the end of the month, I had 5 more clients, then 10. Word spread. Apparently, there were a lot of women out there ready to stop being nice and start being informed.
Emma came by one afternoon with iced coffee and a little succulent in a clay pot. "For your window," she said. "Every boss woman needs office plants." We sat together and watched the cars pass below. "I never imagined this for you," she admitted. "Not because you couldn't, just because you always put everyone else first." I smiled. So did I. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry anymore. Just awake. Every choice I made from that point forward was mine. I went hiking on weekends. I learned to cook for one without it feeling sad. I took up photography. Nothing fancy, just capturing shadows on brick walls or light hitting the kitchen floor at 3 p.m. And one Sunday morning, 6 months later, I got a letter in the mail. From Charles. Handwritten. No return address. It said, "I thought I was leaving you to start over, but it turns out you were the one being reborn. I hope you're well. I hope you forgive me someday. But even if you don't, I understand." I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Some endings don't need words, just space and peace. That night, I lit a candle in the window and sat with a glass of wine watching the flame flicker. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I wasn't performing for anyone. I was just being. Fully. Finally. Me.
It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing special about the day, just one of those gray in-between ones when the world feels paused. I was grabbing coffee near my office, ordering my usual, when I saw him. Charles, standing across the street in front of that thrift bookstore I used to love. He hadn't seen me yet. He looked tired. Not in the physical sense, in the kind of way people look when life stops bending to their will. For a split second, I thought about ducking away, pretending not to notice. But something in me said no. This was the moment I didn't know I needed. I walked up slowly, calm. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just me. "Charles," I said. He turned, startled, then softened. "Julia, wow, you look different." "I am," I said. He nodded, not knowing what to do with his hands. "Can we sit for a second?" I hesitated, then nodded. We found a bench nearby. It smelled like pine and old paperbacks. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was earned. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said quickly. "I just needed to say something out loud." I waited. Let him speak. "You were right. About everything. I lost track of who I was. I chased something that never loved me back, and in the process, I lost the only person who actually did." I didn't reply. There wasn't much left to say, but he kept going. I thought freedom meant starting over. Turns out freedom's expensive when you have no one to share it with. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt distance. Not emotional distance, just the space that comes from growth. "Charles," I said gently, "I don't hate you." He blinked. "You don't?" "No, because hating you would mean you still have power over me. And you don't. Not anymore." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you for saying that." I stood up, smiled. "Take care of yourself." He looked up, a little lost. "Will I ever stop being the villain in your story?" I paused. "You already stopped being in the story. That's the difference." Then I walked away. My coffee had gone cold. The sky had cleared just enough to let sunlight through. I took a sip anyway. Bittersweet, but warm. 6 months later, I stood in front of a room full of women, all different ages, stories, accents, but with one thing in common. They were all rebuilding. It was the first workshop hosted by my firm, not some fancy hotel ballroom, just the community center near my neighborhood. Folding chairs, mismatched mugs, one too many lemon bars. But it was real, and it was mine. I opened with a question I never thought I'd ask out loud. When did you last look at your bank account and feel proud? Some women laughed, a few looked down. One woman, gray hair, sharp lipstick, said, "Never." And just like that, the room cracked open. We talked, we learned, we shared stories of leaving, of staying too long, of second chances and second incomes, of building safety nets we weren't raised to believe we deserved. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the back row, just for a minute, letting it sink in. The woman I used to be wouldn't recognize this version of me. And I think that's the point. I don't want to go back to being someone who begged for space at someone else's table. I built my own, with my own hands. And if it wobbles sometimes, good. That's how I know it's real. Emma calls me twice a week now, not because she has to, because she wants to. She sends me podcasts she thinks I'll like, tells me about her new job, her new apartment, her new boundaries. I listen, not as a mother with answers, but as a woman who finally asked herself better questions. People ask if I regret anything. And sure, I could say I regret wasting time or trusting the wrong person. But the truth is, without those years, without that pain, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be me. So no, I don't regret. I rebuild. I rewrite. I reclaim. My name is Julia Bennett. I'm 43 years old, and this isn't the end of my story. It's just where I stopped surviving and started choosing every single day.